The space station floated silently between two burning stars. Its metal walls reflected the orange and blue light from the twin suns. Inside, the corridors buzzed with activity. Creatures from 30 different worlds walked through the halls. Some had scales. Others had fur. A few glowed with their own inner light. This was Harmony Prime, the neutral meeting place for the Galactic Unity Council. Taehyun pressed his face against the observation window. His breath fogged the glass as he stared at the alien ships docked outside. Each vessel looked nothing like the others. Some were organic, grown instead of built. Others were pure crystal that somehow moved through space. His heart raced with excitement. As a xenobiologist from Earth, he had spent his entire life dreaming of this moment. "Stop gawking like a tourist," Hana said, walking up behind him. She was the human ambassador, dressed in a formal suit that represented Earth. Her voice was stern, but her eyes smiled. "We need to get to the assembly hall. The summit starts in 20 minutes. Taehyun pulled himself away from the window. He adjusted his simple clothes, feeling underdressed compared to Hana. "Sorry, I just can't believe we're actually here. Real aliens everywhere." "Yes, and they're all watching us," Hana replied. "Remember, we're representing humanity. Try not to look so amazed by everything." They walked together through the station. Other delegates passed them in the halls. Most ignored the humans completely. A few glanced at them with what might have been curiosity or might have been contempt. Taehyun couldn't tell. Reading alien expressions was impossible. The assembly hall was enormous. The ceiling curved high above, showing the stars outside through transparent panels. Hundreds of seats arranged in a circle faced a central platform. Each section was marked with a different symbol representing each species. Taehyun found the Earth section and sat down. Only 5 humans had been invited to this summit. He felt very small. Ambassador Crix entered the hall. The alien was tall, with silver skin that looked like liquid metal. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber without any visible technology. "Welcome, representatives of the Galactic Unity Council. Today marks a historic moment. For the first time, we gather not for politics or trade, but for understanding." The crowd quieted. Every being focused on Crix. "We have fought wars," Crix continued. "We have made treaties. We have traded goods and shared technology. But we remain strangers to each other. Today, we begin the Cultural Exchange Initiative. We will learn about each other's ways of life, art, and traditions. And we will start with something fundamental to all species: partnership." Murmurs spread through the hall. Taehyun leaned forward, curious about what Crix meant. "Each species has brought candidates," Crix announced. "Males who represent the best of their kind. They will participate in cultural demonstrations. And our female representatives will have the opportunity to select partners for compatibility studies. This is not about breeding or politics. This is about understanding how different species form bonds." Taehyun's stomach dropped. He looked at Hana in panic. She shook her head quickly. "You're not a candidate," she whispered. "You're here as a scientist, to observe and document." Relief washed over him. He watched as males from various species stood and walked to the center platform. They were impressive. One was covered in golden scales that reflected light like armor. Another was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with muscles that seemed carved from stone. A third was elegant, with crystalline skin that sparkled as he moved. His name tag said Velmora's species, the Luminari. More candidates appeared. A creature made of living shadow. An aquatic being in a water-filled suit. A winged humanoid with feathers that changed colors. Each one looked powerful, advanced, and confident. They stood in a line, presenting themselves to the assembly. Then came the female delegates. 7 of them walked to the platform from different sections. Each represented a different species. They moved with grace and purpose. One was Velmora, the luminary with crystalline skin. Another was covered in blue scales with gills on her neck. A third had 4 arms and eyes that glowed purple. Crix spoke again. "These females have volunteered to participate in our first compatibility study. They will choose partners based on their own criteria. There is no wrong choice. This is about personal connection, not politics." The male candidates straightened, trying to look their best. Some flexed their muscles. Others demonstrated their abilities. The golden-scaled one created fire in his palm. The massive one lifted a heavy platform with one hand. The luminary made his body glow brighter. They were showing off, competing for attention. Taehyun watched from his seat, fascinated by the display. He took notes on his tablet, recording everything he saw. This was incredible research material. The way different species approached courtship and partnership revealed so much about their cultures. Now, Crick said, the female delegates will make their selections. Please approach the candidate of your choice. The hall fell silent. Every eye watched the 7 females. They looked at the line of impressive males. Some candidates smiled confidently. The golden-scaled one puffed out his chest. The massive one flexed his arms. They expected to be chosen. But the females didn't move toward them. Instead, they turned away from the platform. Their heads moved in unison, scanning the assembly seats. Velmora's glowing eyes swept across the different sections. The blue-scaled female searched the crowd. The 4-armed delegate pointed. They were all pointing in the same direction. Toward the Earth section. Toward Taehyun. He felt his blood turn to ice. 7 alien females were staring directly at him. 7 fingers pointed at his seat. The entire assembly followed their gaze. Hundreds of alien eyes landed on him. No, he whispered. No, there's a mistake. But Velmora spoke, her voice like wind chimes. Him, the human male. That one. The other females nodded. Yes, the human. The assembly hall exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. The male candidates stood frozen in shock and anger. The golden-scaled one roared. The massive one slammed his fist on the platform, cracking the metal. Crix tried to restore order, but his voice was drowned out. Hana grabbed Taehyun's arm. What did you do? Nothing. Taehyun's hands shook. I just sat here. I'm not even a candidate. But the 7 alien females were already walking toward him. They moved through the chaos with determination. Their eyes never left his face. And Taehyun knew in that moment that his simple life as a xenobiologist had just ended forever. The assembly hall remained in chaos for nearly 10 minutes. Delegates argued in their native languages. Some shouted at the female representatives. Others demanded explanations from Ambassador Crix. The rejected male candidates stood frozen on the platform, their pride shattered. The massive stone-like being had actually cracked the metal floor with his fist. The golden-scaled one's fire had grown brighter with his anger. Taehyun sat in his seat, unable to move. His mind raced but found no answers. He had done nothing to attract attention. He had simply watched and taken notes. He wasn't even supposed to be part of the selection process, yet 7 alien females stood in a semicircle around his seat, waiting patiently while the assembly descended into madness. Hana stood beside him, her diplomatic training barely keeping her calm. She addressed the nearest female, the one with crystalline skin. Delegate Velmora, there must be some misunderstanding. This human is not a candidate. He's a scientist. He's here only to observe. Velmora tilted her head. Light refracted through her transparent features, creating rainbow patterns. We know what he is. We choose him anyway. But why? Hana's voice rose despite her training. Look at the candidates on the platform. They're stronger, more advanced. They have abilities humans don't possess. Why would you choose someone who wasn't even competing? The blue-scaled female with gills stepped forward. Her voice bubbled like water flowing over rocks. That is exactly why. He was not competing. He was not performing. He was not pretending to be something he is not. Crix finally managed to restore some order. His silver form moved to the center of the platform, his presence commanding attention. Delegates, please. Let us discuss this calmly. Female representatives, I must ask you to explain your choice. The council needs to understand. The 7 females looked at each other. Some silent communication seemed to pass between them. Then Velmora spoke for all of them. Her voice carried clearly through the hall. We have observed all the candidates carefully, she began. We saw their strength. We witnessed their powers. They are impressive by the standards of their species. But we also saw something else. We saw performance, display, competition. They showed us what they wanted us to see. She turned to look at Taehyun. This human male did none of those things. When the other candidates demonstrated their abilities, he watched with genuine curiosity. When they competed, he took notes as if learning about them. He showed no jealousy, no need to prove himself superior. He was content to observe and learn. The 4-armed, purple-eyed female spoke next. Her voice was surprisingly soft. In my species, we value honesty above all else. The candidates presented perfect versions of themselves. But perfection is a mask. The human male wears no mask. His emotions show on his face. His uncertainty, his wonder, his fear right now. All of it visible, all of it real. A winged female with silver feathers added her voice. My people prize authenticity. We can sense when beings are genuine or false. The candidates radiated false confidence. They tried too hard. The human male radiates something different. Authenticity. Truth. He is exactly what he appears to be. Nothing hidden. Nothing false. Taehyun finally found his voice. He stood up, his legs shaking. I appreciate your words, but I can't accept this. I'm not qualified. I'm not special. I'm just a regular person from Earth. I came here to learn about other species, not to be chosen for anything. There's been a mistake. The golden-scaled candidate, whose name was Drexos, laughed bitterly from the platform. Listen to him. He admits his inadequacy. He lacks even the confidence to accept honor when offered. How can such a weak creature be chosen over warriors and leaders? But his words seemed to have the opposite effect. The 7 females nodded as if Taehyun had just proven their point. Velmora spoke again. He admits what he does not know. He acknowledges his limitations. This is wisdom, not weakness. The candidates on that platform cannot admit limitations. They believe they have none, but every being has limits. To deny them is to live in delusion. The aquatic female in her water suit moved closer to Taehyun. Through the transparent helmet, he could see her flowing fins. My species has studied Earth. Your people face death. You are mortal in ways most species here are not. You live such short lives, yet you persist. You create, you hope, you love knowing it will end. This is courage beyond what immortals can understand. Ambassador Crix raised his hands for silence. This is unprecedented. The Council must discuss what this means. Clearly, there are factors we did not consider when organizing this exchange. Drexo stepped forward, his scales gleaming with anger. I demand a formal challenge. Let the human prove his worth against the original candidates. Physical tests, mental tests. Let him demonstrate why he deserves this honor over those of us who have trained for it. Murmurs of agreement spread through the hall. Many delegates nodded. The rejected candidates all showed support for this idea. They wanted a chance to reclaim their dignity. Hana immediately protested. That's not fair. Taehyun isn't prepared for competition. He's a civilian scientist, not a warrior or champion. Then he should not have been chosen, another male candidate growled. This one was covered in armor like scales. If he cannot prove his worth, the female should reconsider. The 7 females looked at each other again. Finally, they nodded as one. Velmora spoke. We agree to tests, but not the kind you imagine. We do not care about strength or speed. Test what matters to us. Test understanding. Test empathy. Test authenticity. Crix considered this. A compromise, then. A series of tests that measure different qualities, both physical and mental, both power and understanding. Will this satisfy all parties? The male candidates agreed reluctantly. They were confident that any test would expose human weakness. Drexo smiled, flames dancing between his fingers. Yes, let the test begin. When the human fails, perhaps these females will see reason. Taehyun felt Hana grip his shoulder. She leaned close and whispered, You don't have to do this. I can find a diplomatic way out. But Taehyun looked at the 7 alien females. They had chosen him for reasons he didn't fully understand. But they had chosen him. They saw something in humanity that he hadn't recognized himself. Maybe it was worth finding out what that was. I'll do the tests, he said quietly. Not to compete, not to prove I'm better, but to understand why they chose me. Maybe we all need to understand. Hana sighed but nodded. She understood his curiosity. It was why he had become a scientist. Crix announced the decision. In 3 days we will hold the trial of worth. All candidates, including the human, will participate. The tests will be designed by a neutral council. We will discover the truth together. The assembly slowly dispersed. Delegates discussed the strange situation in clusters. The male candidates left the platform, most glaring at Taehyun as they passed. Only Drexo stopped to speak. 3 days, human. 3 days until everyone sees you for what you really are. Inferior. After he left, Velmora approached Taehyun one last time. Do not fear the tests. We did not choose you for abilities you lack. We chose you for qualities you have but do not recognize. In 3 days, perhaps you will see yourself as we see you. She walked away, light dancing through her crystalline form. Taehyun stood alone with Hana in the emptying hall. He looked at his shaking hands and wondered what he had gotten himself into. The stars above shone through the transparent ceiling. indifferent to the drama below. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, his home where life had been simple and predictable just days ago. The next morning, Taehyun woke in his small quarters aboard Harmony Prime. He had barely slept. His mind kept replaying the assembly hall scene. 7 alien females pointing at him, hundreds of shocked faces, the anger of the rejected candidates. It all felt like a dream, but the message on his tablet proved it was real. He had 3 meetings scheduled with council representatives today. The first meeting was with Dr. Yuna, a human psychologist who had arrived overnight from Earth. She sat across from him in a small conference room, her tablet full of notes. She looked tired but excited. "The council wants me to study this situation," she explained. "They need to understand why all 7 females chose you. More importantly, they want to know what this reveals about humanity's place in the galaxy." Taehyun rubbed his face. "I still don't understand it myself. I'm nobody special." "That's the 3rd time you've said something like that," Yuna observed, making a note. "You keep diminishing yourself. Is that a personal trait or something cultural?" "I'm just being honest. I'm not a warrior or a leader. I'm a scientist who studies alien life. That's all." Yuna smiled slightly. "And you see that as just something interesting." She set down her tablet. "The council has given me permission to interview the 7 females. They also want you to spend time with them. Supervised cultural exchanges. Are you comfortable with that?" Taehyun nodded slowly. "If it helps us understand what's happening, yes." The first exchange was with Velmora, the crystalline luminari. They met in a neutral observation room with large windows showing the stars. She stood near the glass, light refracting through her transparent body. Taehyun approached carefully, unsure how to begin. "You look nervous," Velmora said without turning. Her voice was like wind chimes. "I am," Taehyun admitted. "I don't know what to say. I don't want to disappoint you." "Disappoint me?" She turned, her features difficult to read, but her tone curious. "Explain. You chose me. All of you did. But I don't know why. I'm afraid you'll realize you made a mistake." Velmora moved closer. "In my species, we abandoned emotion 3,000 years ago. We evolved beyond it. We made ourselves perfect through genetic engineering and mental discipline. No anger, no sadness, no fear, no love, only logic and purpose." Taehyun listened, fascinated despite his nervousness. "But something was lost," she continued. "Our civilization functions perfectly. We never fight. We never suffer. Yet we also never truly connect. We exist beside each other, not with each other. When I looked at those male candidates, I saw what my species has become. Perfect, empty, performing connection without feeling it." She gestured toward him. "Then I looked at you, and I saw emotion written on your face, fear, curiosity, wonder, all of it real, all of it honest. I realized what my species lost, what your species kept. You feel things we can no longer feel, and you're not ashamed of it." Taehyun didn't know what to say. He had never thought of human emotions as valuable. They often seemed like weaknesses. His second exchange was with Liz, a Velkari warrior. She had blue scales and gills on her neck. They met in a training room where she was practicing with a long blade. Taehyun watched her move with incredible grace and deadly precision. "Your species values strength," he observed. "We value capability," Liz corrected, finishing her form and lowering her weapon. "But there are many kinds of capability. Physical strength is only one." She sat on a bench and gestured for him to join her. "Your species survived despite physical weakness. You have no natural weapons, no scales or claws or venom. You're slow compared to predators, fragile. Yet you dominated your planet." "How?" Taehyun thought about it. "We adapted, used tools, worked together, found creative solutions." "Exactly." Liz nodded. "The male candidates showed me physical power, impressive, but power alone is not capability. I watched you take notes during the ceremony. You were learning, adapting, understanding. That is true capability. The ability to face the unknown and find a way forward." She pulled out a small device and showed him a poem on its screen. It was in her language, but the translation appeared below. The poem spoke of gentle rain that wore down mountains, of persistence outlasting force. "This is from our ancient literature," Liz explained. "Written before we became a warrior culture, when we understood that strength has many forms. Looking at you reminded me of these old truths." The third exchange was with Nari, the 4-armed purple-eyed female. She was from a species called the Ithri, who valued honesty above all else. They met in a garden area of the station, surrounded by plants from different worlds. "My people can sense deception," Nari said, her forehands gently tending to a flowering plant. "It's a psychic ability we developed over millennia." In the assembly hall, I could feel the dishonesty radiating from the male candidates. Not lies exactly, but performance, pretense. They were showing false versions of themselves. She looked at Taehyun with all three of her eyes. The third was in the center of her forehead. "You radiated nothing but truth. Fear, yes. Confusion, yes. But no deception, no mask. You were exactly what you appeared to be. Do you understand how rare that is in this galaxy?" "No," Taehyun admitted. "On Earth, people hide their feelings all the time. It's considered polite." "Perhaps," Nari said. "But you were not trying to hide. You simply existed as yourself. That's different." The fourth exchange was with Isla, an aquatic being who lived in a water-filled suit. Her species, the Neridi, lived in vast oceans on their homeworld. They communicated through sound waves that her suit translated. "Your species fascinates mine," Isla said, her flowing fins moving in the water as she spoke. "You know you will die. Your lifespans are so short compared to ours. We live for thousands of your years. Yet you do not despair. You create art, build civilizations, love each other knowing it will end. Why?" Taehyun had never been asked this question so directly. Because the fact that it ends makes it matter? If we lived forever, maybe nothing would feel important. Knowing our time is limited makes us value it. Isla's fins stilled. "We have never considered this. My species has grown bored with existence. We have infinite time, so we waste it. Perhaps that is why we no longer form the strong bonds our ancestors did. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels precious." She pressed one fin against the inside of her suit, as close as she could come to touching the glass between them. "When I saw you in that hall, I sensed urgency. Not panic, but purpose. As if every moment mattered to you. I want to understand that feeling again." Over the 3 days, Taehyun met with all 7 females. Each conversation revealed something new. They had chosen him not despite his humanity, but because of it. His emotions. His vulnerability. His honesty. His mortality. Things he had always seen as weaknesses, they saw as strengths. Dr. Yuna compiled her findings and presented them to a small council meeting. Taehyun and Hana attended. Yuna's report was clear. Advanced species had evolved beyond certain traits, believing they were improving themselves. But in doing so, they had lost essential parts of what made life meaningful. Humans retain what others have discarded, Yuna explained. Emotional authenticity, awareness of mortality, creative adaptation born from physical weakness. These aren't flaws. They're features that make human consciousness rich and complete. Ambassador Crix listened carefully. His silver features showed something that might have been surprise. "Are you suggesting that humanity, one of the youngest and least advanced species in this council, has something to teach the rest of us?" "I'm suggesting," Yuna replied carefully, "that advancement and wisdom aren't the same thing. You can have one without the other." The trial was set for the next day, but Taehyun no longer feared it as much. He understood now that the 7 females hadn't made a mistake. They had seen something real. Whether he could prove it to the rest of the galaxy remained to be seen. The evening before the trial, Taehyun couldn't stay in his quarters. His mind was too active, his nerves too tight. He wandered the halls of Harmony Prime, trying to walk off his anxiety. The station was quieter at night, with most delegates in their quarters. The artificial lighting dimmed to simulate evening, and the stars outside seemed brighter through the windows. He found himself in one of the observation decks. He wasn't alone. A human security officer stood near the window, watching the ships docked outside. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with alert eyes that missed nothing. His name tag read Minho. "Couldn't sleep either?" Minho asked, glancing at Taehyun. "Too much on my mind," Taehyun admitted. "Tomorrow's trial. I still can't believe this is happening." Minho smiled slightly. "You're the talk of the station. The human who was chosen by everyone. Must be strange." "That's an understatement." Taehyun joined him at the window. "Were you assigned to this summit from the beginning?" "Yes, security detail. Making sure humans stay safe among dozens of alien species." Minho's expression grew more serious. "And right now I'm worried about keeping you safe." Taehyun turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" The rejected candidates? Specifically Drexos and his friends. They've been meeting in private a lot. I've been monitoring station security feeds as part of my job. Their behavior is suspicious. A chill ran down Taehyun's spine. Suspicious how? They're angry, humiliated, and they're plotting something. I can't prove it yet, but I've seen this kind of behavior before. Pride is dangerous when wounded. Minho pulled out a small tablet showing security footage. Look at this. 3 days ago, right after the assembly, Drexos met with 5 other rejected candidates in a restricted area of the station. Why go somewhere private if you're just talking? Taehyun watched the footage. The aliens moved through a darkened corridor, looking around as if checking for observers. Have you reported this? To human security, yes. To the council, not yet. I need more evidence. Right now, it just looks like upset candidates complaining to each other, but my instincts say it's more than that. What do you think they're planning? Minho shook his head. I don't know. But the trial is tomorrow. If they want to discredit you, that's when they'll act. I'll be watching. Stay alert. Taehyun thanked him and returned to his quarters, his anxiety now mixed with genuine concern. He tried to sleep but kept thinking about Minho's warning. What could they do? The trial would be supervised by the council. Security would be present. Surely nothing dangerous could happen in such a controlled environment. He was wrong. The next morning, the trial began in a massive zero-gravity chamber. The council had designed tests that would compare candidates in various ways. The chamber could simulate different environments and conditions. Delegates filled observation areas around the chamber, eager to watch. The first tests were physical: strength, speed, endurance. Taehyun knew he would fail these badly, and he did. Drexos lifted weights that Taehyun couldn't budge. The stone-skinned candidate ran at speeds Taehyun couldn't match. The winged candidate flew through obstacle courses while Taehyun struggled to climb. The audience murmured. Some laughed. The rejected candidates smiled, their confidence returning. Taehyun finished last in every physical test. His muscles ached, his pride hurt, but Velmora and the other females watched with unchanged expressions. They didn't seem disappointed. Then came mental tests, memory, calculation, logic puzzles. Again, Taehyun struggled. The crystalline candidate had perfect memory, recalling thousands of facts instantly. Others solved mathematical problems in seconds that took Taehyun minutes. His scores were consistently low. Drexo stood in the center of the chamber, his golden scales gleaming with triumph. This is your chosen one. This is what you selected over warriors and scholars. He fails every test, but Ambassador Crix raised a hand. The physical and mental tests were preliminary. They established baseline capabilities. Now we move to the tests requested by the female delegates. Tests of understanding and empathy. The chamber's environment shifted. Holographic scenarios appeared around them. The first scenario showed a luminary in distress isolated from their community. The candidates were asked to help. The crystalline candidate approached and tried to solve the problem logically, offering efficient solutions. But his words were cold, clinical. The distressed luminary hologram didn't respond positively. Drexos tried next, using his authority and strength to command the situation. But his approach felt domineering, forceful. Again, the hologram showed no comfort. Then it was Taehyun's turn. He approached the hologram slowly, unsure what to do. He had no special powers, no advanced knowledge, so he did what felt natural. He sat down beside the hologram and asked, "What do you need? How can I help?" He listened as the hologram described feeling disconnected, unable to relate to others. Taehyun shared his own experiences feeling isolated, different, misunderstood. He didn't try to fix the problem immediately. He just understood it, acknowledged it, sat with it. The hologram's body language changed, relaxed, connected. The test registered success. More scenarios followed. A Velkari warrior struggling with guilt over past violence. An Ithri dealing with dishonesty in their community. A Neridi feeling the weight of immortal existence. Each time the other candidates tried to solve problems with logic, strength, or authority. Each time Taehyun simply listened, empathized, and understood. He didn't win every scenario. Sometimes his approach wasn't right. But he won more than anyone else. The audience grew quiet, watching something they hadn't expected. A human connecting with aliens in ways their own species members couldn't. During a break between tests, the chamber switched to zero gravity for a cultural demonstration. Various species would show art or traditions in the floating environment. It was meant to be celebratory, not part of the competition. Taehyun floated in the chamber with others, watching a beautiful display of light and sound from the luminary. Then the gravity system suddenly failed completely. Not just reduced, but malfunctioning. Objects that should have stayed in place broke free. People tumbled uncontrollably. Warning alarms blared. Minho's voice crackled through the communication system. Sabotage. Someone tampered with the gravity controls. In the chaos, a large piece of equipment broke free and hurtled toward the observation area where the 7 female delegates sat. They couldn't move in time. The trajectory would hit them directly. Taehyun acted without thinking. He grabbed a loose cable floating nearby and swung himself toward the equipment. He couldn't stop it, he wasn't strong enough. But he changed its angle slightly, just enough. The equipment spun past the observation area, missing the females by centimeters. But the cable snapped, and Taehyun went flying toward a wall of sharp metal supports. He was going to hit hard, possibly die. In that moment he felt strangely calm. At least the females were safe. Then strong hands grabbed him. Drexos had pushed off from another surface and caught Taehyun, absorbing the impact against his armored scales. They hit the wall together, but Drexos took the damage. The golden-scaled alien grunted in pain, but held on until the gravity system restored. They fell to the floor together as gravity returned. Taehyun lay there stunned. Drexos had saved him. Why? Security forces rushed in. Minho was among them. Lock down the chamber. Find who sabotaged the system. Later, in an emergency meeting, Minho presented evidence. The gravity sabotage had been planned by Drexos and 4 other candidates. They had meant to cause chaos, to make Taehyun look incompetent or dangerous. But the plan went wrong. Too wrong. People could have died. Drexos sat in custody, his scales dim with shame. I only wanted to embarrass him, to prove humans were unworthy. I didn't mean for it to be lethal. When I saw him save those females at risk to himself, I realized I had become the very thing I accused him of being. Weak, afraid, false. Ambassador Crix's silver face showed disappointment. You will face consequences for this, all of you involved. But Taehyun surprised everyone. He saved my life. After I cost him his pride, he still saved me. Doesn't that count for something? The room fell silent. Velimora spoke softly. This is why we chose him. He sees the good in others even when they act against him. This is not weakness. This is strength we have forgotten. The trial was postponed while the council investigated, but everyone present had seen what mattered. Not test scores, not physical ability, but character shown in crisis. And in that moment, the galaxy had seen what humanity could offer. The question was whether they would accept it. The council spent 2 days investigating the sabotage. During that time, Taehyun recovered in the medical bay. He had bruises and a sprained wrist, but nothing serious. The doctors told him he was lucky. If Drexos hadn't caught him, the impact would have killed him. The 7 female delegates visited him together. They stood around his bed in a semicircle, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Velimora spoke first. You risked your life to save us. You had no obligation, no connection to us. Yet you acted without hesitation. Taehyun shifted uncomfortably on the bed. Anyone would have done the same. No, Liz said firmly, her blue scales catching the light. Most would have protected themselves first. That is natural. That is survival instinct. You ignored survival instinct. Nari, the 4-armed Ithri, leaned closer. We need to tell you something. Our choice was not random. Each of our species has been studying Earth for years. We knew about human behavior. We knew about your capacity for self-sacrifice. We came to this summit hoping to find what we suspected existed. Isla, floating in her water suit, added, Our species are dying, not physically, culturally, emotionally. We have advanced so far that we've lost what makes life worth living. When we saw humans, we saw what we need to survive. Taehyun listened, trying to process their words. So this was all planned? The choice everything? Not planned, Velimora corrected. Hoped for. We genuinely did not know if a human would be present, or if they would demonstrate what we needed to see. You exceeded our hopes. Before Taehyun could respond, Ambassador Crix entered the medical bay. His silver form moved with authority. The investigation is complete. Drexos and his co-conspirators have confessed. They will face punishment according to their own species' laws. However, the trial will continue. The council demands completion. Hana, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. Taehyun needs rest. He's injured. I'm fine, Taehyun said, though his wrist ached. Let's finish this. 3 days later, the trial resumed. This time, the atmosphere was different. The viewing areas were packed. News of the sabotage and rescue had spread throughout the station. Delegates who hadn't cared before now wanted to see what would happen. The remaining candidates stood in a line. Drexos was absent, still in custody. Only 4 candidates remained to compete against Taehyun. They looked less confident now. The sabotage had shamed them all, even those not directly involved. Ambassador Crix addressed the assembly. The physical and mental tests have concluded. The human performed poorly in those areas, as expected. However, the tests of understanding showed different results. Today we conduct the final trial. The trial of understanding. A large holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed complex problems facing different species. Real problems, not simulations. Each candidate will be presented with a genuine issue from another species' civilization, Crix explained. You will have 1 hour to propose a solution. You may use any resources available, but you cannot simply apply technology or force. These problems require understanding the species, their culture, their needs. The first problem appeared on the display. It showed the Luminari species facing a crisis of connection. Their population was declining not from death but from lack of new births. Luminari no longer formed pair bonds. They existed in isolation, perfect and alone. The crystalline candidate from the Luminari approached first. He analyzed the problem logically, proposing genetic modifications to force bonding instincts. His solution was efficient but cold. The council members shook their heads. The stone-skinned candidate suggested mandatory pairing enforced by law. Again, the council rejected this. Force wasn't understanding. Taehyun stepped forward. His wrist still hurt, but he ignored it. He looked at the problem display, thinking about his conversations with Velmora, about what she had told him about losing emotion in pursuit of perfection. The Luminari don't need genetic modification or laws, he said slowly. They need to remember how to feel. They engineered emotion out of themselves because they saw it as weakness. But emotion is what drives connection. Without it, there's no reason to bond. He paused, organizing his thoughts. I suggest creating spaces for emotional exploration. Art galleries, music halls, places where Luminari can experience feelings safely, in small doses. Let them remember what joy feels like, what curiosity feels like, what love feels like. Once they remember, the bonding might return naturally. Velmora stood in the observation area. Her crystalline form glowed brighter. This is the first solution that addresses our actual problem. We have tried force and logic for generations. No one thought to simply help us remember what we lost. The second problem involved the Velkari warriors. They were suffering from a crisis of purpose. After centuries of peace, warriors no longer had battles to fight. Many were falling into depression. Their entire identity built around conflict that no longer existed. The winged candidate suggested creating simulated wars. Give the warriors something to fight, even if artificial. The council members looked uncomfortable with this idea. Another candidate proposed converting warriors into law enforcement, channel their combat skills into control, but Liz stood and shook her head. That would only redirect violence, not solve the problem. Taehyun approached again. He thought about his conversation with Liz, about her old poem, about strength taking many forms. Warriors aren't just fighters, he said. They're protectors, defenders. That purpose doesn't disappear when wars end. The Velkari could redirect their warrior culture toward protection of the vulnerable. Natural disaster response, search and rescue, medical emergency teams, protecting lives instead of taking them. The skills are similar. The purpose remains. Only the target changes. Liz stood again. This honors what we are while evolving what we do. No other candidate saw this. The third problem showed the Ithri people struggling with a generation that had lost their psychic ability to detect lies. For a species built on honesty, this was creating chaos. Young Ithri couldn't tell who was truthful anymore. Candidates suggested forcing the psychic ability back through genetic manipulation, or creating technology to detect lies artificially. Both solutions missed something fundamental. Taehyun studied the problem. He thought about Nari and her people. The Ithri relied on psychic ability for honesty, but humans don't have that ability. We had to build cultures of honesty without it. We created systems, witnesses, evidence, transparency. Maybe the young Ithri don't need their psychic ability restored. Maybe they need to learn what humans learned. How to trust through action, not just sensing. How to build honesty into your systems instead of relying on individual detection. Nari's three eyes all focused on Taehyun. We assumed we had to restore what was lost. You suggest we could adapt instead. Learn a new way. This is wisdom. The fourth problem showed Isla's species, the Neridi. They were dying from boredom. Immortal, with infinite time, nothing felt meaningful anymore. Their birth rate had stopped. Why create new life when existence felt empty? Other candidates had no answer. How do you solve boredom for immortals? Technology couldn't fix this. Force couldn't either. Taehyun approached the problem carefully. This was perhaps the hardest one. Humans understand meaning because we know we'll die. Our time limit makes things matter. The Neridi have no limit, so nothing feels urgent or important. He thought harder. But what if they created artificial limits? Not death, but goals with deadlines. Projects that must be completed within a set time. Relationships that have defined periods. Create temporary meaning. Make time scarce by choice, not by nature. If you have forever, you have to choose to make moments matter. You have to pretend time is limited to feel its value. The chamber fell silent. Isla pressed against her water suit, her fins moving excitedly. No one has suggested this. We always thought our immortality was the solution. You suggest it's the problem, and that we must choose limitation to find meaning again. Ambassador Crick stood. His silver face was unreadable, but his voice carried respect. The human has solved problems that have plagued species for generations. Not through technology or force, but through understanding. He sees what we cannot see about ourselves. The four remaining candidates stood quietly. They had lost. Not in strength or intelligence, but in empathy and insight. One by one, they bowed their heads in acknowledgement. The 7 female delegates approached Taehyun together. Velmora spoke for all of them. We chose correctly. You have proven what we already knew. Humanity has something precious. Something the galaxy needs desperately. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some delegates argued humans were just lucky. Others said the tests were biased. But many stood and applauded. They had seen something remarkable. A species barely old enough to reach the stars teaching lessons to civilizations millions of years older. The trial was over, but its implications were just beginning. The assembly hall filled beyond capacity. Word had spread throughout Harmony Prime about Dr. Yuna's presentation. She stood at the central platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing her research. Taehyun sat in the Earth section with Hana, feeling nervous about what would be revealed. Ambassador Crix called the assembly to order. Dr. Yuna has spent weeks studying the events of this summit. She interviewed the female delegates, analyzed the trial results, and researched the history of numerous species. Today, she will present her findings. The council asks that you listen with open minds. Yuna activated her first display. It showed a timeline spanning millions of years. Advanced species share a common evolutionary pattern. As civilizations develop technology, they also develop genetic engineering. And almost universally, they use this engineering to eliminate what they perceive as flaws. The display showed different species modifying themselves, removing aggression, eliminating sadness, cutting out fear. Each change made them more efficient, more logical, more perfect. These modifications improve individuals in measurable ways, Yuna continued. Luminari without emotion don't suffer from depression or anxiety. Velkari without unnecessary aggression don't have domestic conflicts. I3 with perfect honesty detection eliminate fraud. Each species became better at specific functions. She paused, letting this sink in. But something else happened. Something unexpected. These species began to lose their ability to connect meaningfully with each other, to form deep bonds, to feel that life has purpose beyond mere function. A new display showed birth rates across various species. Nearly all advanced species showed declining populations, not from death, but from lack of reproduction. Species that should have been thriving were slowly fading. The Luminari haven't had a natural pair bond in 300 years, Yuna said. The Neridi's birth rate has dropped to nearly 0. The Velkari struggle with depression despite having no biological basis for it. These aren't separate problems. They're symptoms of the same cause. Ambassador Crix leaned forward. And that cause is, evolution in pursuit of perfection removes the imperfections that make life meaningful, Yuna replied. Fear reminds us to be careful. Sadness teaches us what we value. Anger motivates us to change injustice. Love drives us to connect. Mortality makes time precious. These aren't bugs in the system. They're features that make consciousness complete. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some delegates looked offended. Others looked thoughtful. Una continued. Humans are less advanced than almost every species here. We're weaker, shorter-lived, more emotional, more flawed, but we retained something others lost. We're complete. We have the full range of conscious experience, even the painful parts, and that completeness is what the female delegates recognized. Velmora stood from her seat. Dr. Una speaks truth. When I look at my species' history, we were happier before we became perfect. We created more art, we loved more deeply. We found joy in existence. Perfection made us efficient but empty. Nari rose as well. The Ithri eliminated our ability to lie, but in doing so, we also eliminated privacy, imagination, the gentle fictions that make social life bearable. We became too honest, too transparent. We lost the ability to dream. More delegates stood, one after another, each sharing what their species had lost in pursuit of advancement. The stone-skinned Titan-born had removed their capacity for play, making them powerful but joyless. The crystalline scholars had eliminated curiosity, making them knowledgeable but lacking wonder. Each perfection had come at a terrible cost. A Valkyrie elder spoke from the assembly floor. My grandmother told stories of a time when our people sang. We had music, poetry, art. Then we decided these were inefficient uses of warrior training time. We eliminated the genetic basis for artistic expression. Now we're strong, but we don't know why we fight. We have no culture worth protecting. Ambassador Crix's silver form seemed to dim. He spoke quietly, his voice barely carrying. The council has known something was wrong for generations. We saw the declining birth rates, the loss of cultural vitality, the emptiness that technology couldn't fill. We tried everything. More genetic modifications, better education, stricter laws. Nothing worked, because we were treating symptoms while ignoring the disease. Dr. Una activated another display. This one showed human history, wars, plagues, suffering, but also art, love, sacrifice, joy. Humans experienced terrible things. We still do, but those terrible things shaped us, made us value the good things, made us appreciate brief moments of happiness, made us willing to sacrifice for each other because we know time is limited and precious. She looked directly at the assembly. I'm not saying humans are superior. We have countless flaws. We're violent, short-sighted, often irrational, but we're complete. And that completeness, that full experience of consciousness is what makes existence meaningful. It's what the female delegates recognized in Tai Hyun, not superiority, completeness. The assembly erupted into argument. Some delegates rejected the idea that advancement could be harmful. Others demanded evidence. A few accused Una of human bias, but many simply sat quietly, thinking about their own species' history, about what they had lost along the way. Ambassador Crix called for order. This presents the council with a profound question. If Dr. Una is correct, what do we do? We cannot undo millions of years of evolution. We cannot simply restore eliminated traits. The genetic damage is permanent for most species. Velmora spoke again. Perhaps we cannot restore what we lost, but we can learn from those who still have it. We can study humanity, not their technology, which is primitive, but their consciousness, which is complete. We can relearn what we forgot. A voice from the back of the assembly challenged this. It was Drexos, recently released from custody. His golden scales were dull with shame, but his voice was clear. So the great galactic species must learn from the primitive humans? This is humiliating. Yes, Taehyun said, standing from his seat. All eyes turned to him. It is humiliating. Just like it was humiliating for me to fail every physical and mental test. Just like it's humiliating for humanity to be the youngest, weakest species here. But humiliation is just pride getting hurt. And pride is another thing you've engineered away because you thought it was a flaw. He walked toward the center platform, his voice growing stronger. You're right that we can't teach you technology. We have nothing to offer there. But we can teach you how to feel again. How to connect. How to find meaning in limited time. How to love knowing it will end. How to create art that serves no purpose except to be beautiful. How to sacrifice for each other. How to be complete instead of perfect. Drexo stared at him, Then slowly the large alien bowed his head. I tried to destroy you because you threatened my pride. But pride made me sabotage the trial. Pride made me risk lives. Pride made me incomplete. You're right. I need to learn what you know. The assembly fell into silence. The revelation was too large to process quickly. Generations of belief in advancement as unquestionable good were being challenged. But the evidence was clear. Advanced species were dying not from war or disease, but from perfection. Ambassador Crick stood. The council will vote on a proposal. The establishment of a cultural exchange program focused on emotional and social learning. Species who wish to participate will send representatives to study human culture, philosophy, art, and emotional experience. This is unprecedented. We have always sought to teach younger species. Now we must be willing to learn from them. The vote took hours. Debates raged. But eventually the proposal passed. Not unanimously, but by a significant majority. The galaxy was ready to admit it had lost something important, and that humanity, despite all its flaws, might help them find it again. After the assembly ended, Tae-hyun stood on an observation deck with the 7 female delegates. They looked at the stars together in comfortable silence. What happens now? Tae-hyun asked. Velamora's crystalline form caught the starlight. Now we begin the hard work. We return to our worlds and try to relearn what we lost. Some of us will resist. Change is difficult, but we have to try. The alternative is extinction. Will you be okay? Tae-hyun asked her directly. She turned to face him. I don't know, but for the first time in my life I feel something like hope, and that's a start. The 7 delegates left one by one, returning to their ships. Each thanked Tae-hyun before leaving, not for being perfect, but for being complete, for showing them what they had forgotten was possible. Hana joined Tae-hyun at the window. You just changed the galaxy. You know that, right? Tae-hyun shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just existed as myself. Exactly, Hana said, smiling. And that was enough. 6 months had passed since the summit on Harmony Prime. Tae-hyun stood in a classroom that didn't look like any classroom on Earth. The walls were transparent, showing the stars beyond. The students sitting before him weren't human. 12 aliens from 8 different species watched him with various combinations of eyes, sensors, and visual organs. This was the first official class of the Humanity Initiative, a program designed to teach emotional and cultural understanding to species that had engineered such things away. Tae-hyun had been appointed as one of the lead instructors, along with Dr. Yuna and several other humans selected for their empathy and teaching ability. Today we're going to talk about sadness, Tae-hyun began. The students shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the topic. Who here has experienced genuine sadness? None raised their hands or appendages. One student, a young luminary named Kira, spoke hesitantly. My species removed sadness 3,000 years ago. We were taught it was inefficient, that it served no purpose. That's what most species believed, Tae-hyun agreed. But let me tell you about my grandmother. She died when I was 15. I loved her very much. When she died, I was sad for a long time. It hurt, every day hurt. I cried, I couldn't eat properly. I couldn't focus on my studies. The students looked confused. This sounded terrible. Why would anyone want to feel this way? But here's what I learned from that sadness, Tae-hyun continued. It taught me how much she mattered to me. If I hadn't been sad, that would mean she wasn't important. The depth of my sadness measured the depth of my love. And over time, the sadness transformed. It became memory, appreciation, gratitude for the time we had together. The sadness never completely disappeared, but it became something beautiful. A Velkari student named Bora raised her hand. So sadness is good because it means something else was good? Exactly. Sadness is the price we pay for love. Joy is the price we pay for the risk of suffering. All emotions are connected. You can't remove the painful ones without also removing the meaningful ones. They're the same thing from different angles. Over the following weeks, Tae-hyun taught classes on various aspects of human experience. Fear and courage, anger and justice, love and loss, humor and play. Each lesson challenged the students to reconsider what they thought they knew about efficiency and perfection. Dr. Yuna ran a separate program focused on art and creativity. She taught alien students how to paint, write poetry, and create music. Most struggled at first. Their minds were trained for logic and efficiency. Creating something without purpose felt wrong to them. But slowly something changed. A Titan-born student named June surprised everyone by writing a poem about the mountains of his homeworld. It wasn't technically perfect, but it conveyed emotion, feeling, longing for something his species had lost. Another program ran parallel to the teaching. Mino headed a team that studied human-alien interaction patterns. They documented what worked and what didn't, which teaching methods helped aliens understand emotion, which activities helped them experience feelings safely. We're basically teaching aliens how to be vulnerable, Minho explained during a staff meeting. That's terrifying for species that spent millennia eliminating vulnerability. We have to go slowly. The program wasn't without problems. Some alien students couldn't handle the emotional intensity. A Narity student experienced her first genuine sadness and had a complete breakdown. She had lived for 2,000 years without feeling pain, and suddenly feeling it was overwhelming. Dr. Yuna worked with her for weeks, teaching her how to process emotions gradually. Other species resisted the program entirely. Several council members still believed that advancement meant moving beyond emotion, not returning to it. They saw the Humanity Initiative as regression. A few even tried to shut it down. But the results spoke for themselves. Students who completed the program reported feeling more alive, more connected to others, more interested in existence. The luminary student Kira formed the first genuine friendship in her species in generations. She and a classmate from another species bonded over shared experiences in the program. More significantly, the program's graduates began making changes on their homeworlds. June the Titan-born returned home and started teaching poetry to other warriors. At first they mocked him, but some listened. And slowly, Titan-born culture began incorporating art again. Velmora visited Taehyun 6 months into the program. She looked different. Her crystalline form still glowed, but something about her presence felt warmer, more alive. "I wanted to thank you personally," she said as they walked through the station's gardens. The Luminary Council approved a cultural restoration project. "We're studying our ancient history before we engineered emotion away. We're trying to understand who we were so we can rediscover who we might be." "How's it going?" Taehyun asked. "Slowly, painfully. We've begun an experimental program where young Luminari can experience emotion in controlled doses. Many hate it. The discomfort is overwhelming after generations without feeling, but some embrace it. They say life feels real for the first time." She paused at a flowering plant, studying it carefully. "I've started experiencing something I think is joy. Small moments where existence feels precious. It's strange, uncomfortable, but also wonderful." Taehyun smiled. "That's exactly how it should feel." Liz also visited, bringing news from the Velkari homeworld. "We've redirected our warrior training. Now half of our forces are disaster response teams, search and rescue, medical emergency units. Last month, an earthquake destroyed 3 cities on our southern continent. Our warriors saved thousands of lives, and for the first time in generations, they felt their purpose was meaningful." She looked at Taehyun with something like gratitude. "You showed us that strength isn't just about destroying threats. It's about protecting life." That simple shift changed everything. The program grew. More species requested access. More students enrolled. More teachers were needed. Earth began sending philosophers, artists, therapists, and poets to help teach. Humans who had never left their planet suddenly found themselves teaching ancient aliens about emotion and meaning. Hana was appointed as the official ambassador for the Humanity Initiative. She coordinated between Earth and the various alien governments, managing the complex politics of the situation. Some humans worried that Earth was giving away its only advantage. If aliens learned emotional intelligence, what would make humanity special? Hana addressed these concerns in a broadcast to Earth. "We're not giving away an advantage. We're sharing wisdom, and in the process we're learning too. These alien species have knowledge we can barely comprehend, technology we can't imagine. By teaching them about emotion, we build relationships. We become valued partners instead of primitive newcomers. We gain respect not through power but through wisdom." A year after the summit, Ambassador Crix visited the program. His silver form moved through the classrooms, observing lessons quietly. Afterward, he met with Taehyun privately. "I was wrong," Crix said simply. "For centuries, I believed advancement meant transcending primitive emotions. I pushed for more genetic modifications, more perfection. I thought I was helping my species evolve." He paused, his form seeming somehow smaller. "But I've started the program myself. Your colleague taught me how to experience fear. Real fear, it was terrible. I understood why my ancestors eliminated it, but then she taught me about courage, and I realized you can't have courage without fear. They're the same thing. How do you feel now? Taehyun asked. Uncomfortable, uncertain, afraid of what I'm feeling. Crix's voice held something new, vulnerability, but also alive in a way I haven't felt in centuries. I've existed for 5,000 years, but I think I've only really lived for the past few months. The Humanity Initiative established permanent centers on 12 worlds. Each center taught emotional education, cultural appreciation, and meaningful connection. The curriculum expanded to include human philosophy, ethics, and social structures. Aliens studied everything from ancient Earth religions to modern psychology. Some alien species began making radical changes. The Ithri voted to stop mandatory honesty scanning of young people, allowing them privacy and imagination. The Velkari established art academies alongside their warrior training centers. The Luminari created emotional support groups where individuals could practice feeling safely. Not everyone accepted the changes. Traditionalist factions in several species fought against what they called primitive regression. Some violence erupted. A Humanity Initiative center on one world was bombed by extremists who believed emotion made their species weak. 3 humans and 7 alien students died in the attack. The galaxy mourned together. And in that shared grief, something important happened. Species that had lived as isolated islands began connecting as a real community. They felt lost together, fear together, anger at injustice together, and then resolution to continue together. 2 years after the summit, Taehyun stood on an observation deck with Velmora, Lis, Nari, and Isla. The other 3 female delegates had returned to their worlds, working on cultural restoration projects. But these 4 visited regularly, checking on the program's progress. We changed the galaxy, Velmora said softly. That day at the summit when we chose you, we didn't.